Hey YouTube, it's Magician34, and I've got an Omni Hero, Gemini Hero, whatever you want to call it, deck. This is for our current format, of course. And check the date. For those of you viewing this 6 months, a year, 2 years from now, please check the date. Thank you. Alright, this is a hero build because it's just so darn good. It's so easy to build. We got 1 copy of Stratos, and I also love this deck. 3 copies of Neos Alias. 2 copies of E-Hero Heat because he's a good beat stick and he says hero at the top, and so he interacts with a lot of your stuff and allows you to miracle fuse and things, which is really important. Also allows you to super poly. 1 copy of Evocador Chevalier because Nova Master is really awesome. This guy is a warrior 4-star Gemini, so he has a lot of interactions with your other cards in your deck. Gives him flexibility. We have 3 copies of Thunder King Ryo because, well, he's Thunder King Ryo and he plays really well with the deck. And this deck has a very beatdown-ish, almost stun-like feel. 2 copies of King Tiger Wang Hu because he's amazing. He just outright kills without even using the chain or anything that comes at 1400 or less. I'm still amazed that there are a lot of players out there who have to read this card to figure out what it does. He's amazing, especially since we run 1 or 2 tricks just for cards like that. We have 1 copy of Gores, and 2 copies of Effect Veiler, round out our monster suite. That's right, there is no Honest in here, mainly because I've run Honest for a long time in hero builds, and frankly I find him to be kind of inconsistent, and oftentimes I don't even get to use him, and oftentimes he's just that one monster in my hand that I'm forced to either set or just sit on because I don't want him to die. And he's kind of a waste of space, and he's often kind of hurt me in games more than helped me. So I'm actually going without him. I know it's against the convention, but playtesting seems to, seems to have convinced me to go otherwise. And you should always go with the playtesting, not with what the community tells you to do. As for the spells, 1 copy of Monster Reborn, 1 copy of Dark Hole, because those are pretty much always staple. 1 copy of Rhoda, of course. 2 copies of Emergency Call, because I'm no longer allowed to run 3. 2 copies of Duality. 2 copies of Super Poly. There's still some matchups where really you don't necessarily want the Super Poly, and when these stack up in your hand, it can really hurt sometimes. So I'm siding with the third one, basically. 2 copies of Miracle Fusion, which is just godly. 3 copies of Gemini Spark, sack your 4-star Gemini, pop something, draw a card. Amazing. Also a quick play, of course, which is one of the strengths of this deck, so many quick plays. 1 copy of Book of Moon, lets you run stuff over and turn off effects. Heavy Storm. And 2 copies of Mystical Space Typhoon, and that kind of rounds out our spells. And we do have a fair trap lineup here, which is really useful. 2 Solemn Warnings, so it gives you that ability to run the field with your 1900s. 2 Torrential Tributes. 2 copies of Bottomless, because that banishing is very powerful. And last but not least, 2 copies of Safe Zone. This is that card I was talking about when I mentioned Wang Hu earlier. This also goes incredibly well on your E-Hero fusions. It's a very good card. Even if you're falling behind and kind of losing a little bit, putting this on one of your monsters so that it doesn't die can enable you to stall for a really long time. It's just fantastic. It's a really good card, especially since there had been some confusion over its ruling. But at, I think it was a Jump Championship not long ago, they did rule that Safe Zone can be chained in response to a card which targets, and of course because the chain resolves backwards, the thing that's being targeted is an invalid target upon resolution because the Safe Zone resolved first. So that ruling is the current ruling as far as I or anybody else I know understands it, which makes Safe Zone really awesome. Alright, and your extra deck right quick is 2 copies of E-Hero the Shining. He's the one you go for the most, and he's very powerful, of course. You have 2 copies of Elemental Hero Oscuridao, or I think that's pronounced correctly, but anyway, he's the one that you use to suck up dark monsters. And he's a decent beat stick, too. Not bad. We're running 2 copies of Nova Master. This guy is just absolutely devastating with Safe Zone, and he's just really good, period. And we have lots of fire to get him out. We have 1 copy of Absolute Zero. I just haven't found him to be as useful in the varying builds of heroes I've built. Unfortunately, I like Zero, but 1 copy of Great Tornado, 1 copy of Gaia, so we have all the elements there. 1 copy of Stardust. It's a Stardust, I guess it's kind of hard to see, but it's a Stardust. 1 copy of Scrap Dragon, 1 copy of Cataster, 1 copy of Android, because remember, we have Valor as a tuner, 1 copy of Maestroke, the Symphony Djinn, and 1 copy of Gemini Pearl. You could make this Excalibur, but I've kind of had mixed experiences with Excalibur. I'm not a big fan of the ones that need just warriors, because you have things like Thunder King in here that are not warriors. I like Pearl over Excalibur just because he's bigger, and the retaliation from your opponent in the long run isn't as bad. So I'm going with Pearl. But you can easily run Excalibur or even Blade Armor Ninja if you want, but I think Pearl's probably going to be a little bit better in more situations numerically. So there you go. Anyway, that's Gemini, Omni Heroes, or whatever you want to call them. It's a very good deck, very consistent, and it's a lot of fun. So I recommend you try it at your next local or even at a large-scale tournament. And until next time, like, comment, subscribe, and check out my channel for more gaming content.